This is another presentation by My Weight World.
How the hamstrings work. The hamstrings physiology. The goal of this presentation is to introduce you to the hamstring muscles, or the back part of the thigh. We will cover the origin, description, function, and we will explore the kinds of activities that cause overuse and pain of the hams. Lastly, we'll learn a good stretch to help overuse hamstring muscles relax. The hamstrings are the group of muscles that are positioned at the back of our thighs. The hamstrings are actually comprised of three separate muscles: the bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. These muscles originate just underneath the gluteus maximus on the pelvic bone and attach on the tibia. The hamstrings are primarily fast-twitch muscles, responding to low reps and powerful movements. The primary functions of the hamstrings are knee flexion, bringing the heel towards the buttocks, and hip extension, moving the leg to the rear. An example of knee flexion is a leg curl exercise. An example of hip extension is the stiff-legged deadlift exercise. The original meaning of the word ham was the fat and muscle behind the knee. Tendons are the tough, string-like extension that attach the muscles to the bones. So the hamstrings are the three thin, tendon-like muscles found on either side of the back of the knee. The three hamstring muscles at the rear of the thigh, semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and bicep femoris, bend the knee and straighten the hip. However, the short head of the bicep femoris, because it has a different origin and nerve source, is not involved in hip extension. As a result, people sometimes wrongly exclude it from the description of the hamstrings. If one part of the muscle is involved, the long head of the bicep femoris, the whole muscle must be characterized as one of the hamstring muscles. Again, three muscles at the rear of the thigh: bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus, together make up the hamstrings. When the hamstrings cross, they affect two joints, your hip and your knee. The semitendinosus and the semimembranosus have the job of extending your hip when your trunk is fixed, or conversely, extending your trunk when your hip is fixed. They also allow you to bend your knee and rotate your lower leg inwardly when your knee is bent. As its name suggests, the bicep femoris has two heads, a long one and a short one. The long head of the biceps femoris extends the hip while you go to take a step. Both the short head and long heads help you bend your knee and outwardly rotate your lower leg when your knee is bent. The hamstrings consist of three separate muscles which have the following distinct names: bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. Because they are attached above to the pelvic bone and below to the tibia, these muscles span both the hip and knee joints. Bicep femoris. Like the bicep brachii and the upper arm, the bicep femoris has two heads, each of which have a separate point of origin. The long head arises from the bottom part of the pelvis, near the groin. The short head arises from the upper part of the thigh and hip bone, and extends up almost as high as the insertion of the gluteus maximus. Semitendinosus. Notably, because its tendon of insertion is quite long, the semitendinosus muscle of the hamstring is located on the rear center of your thigh, along with the semimembranosus and the long head of the bicep femoris. It originates at the bottom of the pelvic bone. The spindle-shaped muscle ends a little below the middle of the thigh and a long, round tendon which lies along the anterior side of the femur and tibia in the shallow depression at the back of the knee. Semimembranosus. Located most towards the center of the body, the semimembranosus gets its name from the membranous tendon where it originates at the back and interior of the thigh. It originates at the bottom of the pelvis bone, above and alongside the bicep femoris and semitendinosus. The tendon of origin expands into a sheet-like fibrous membrane that covers the upper part of the muscles and contracting into the tendon of insertion at the shin bone. The hamstrings enable any propelling movements you make, like walking, running, and jumping. They also exert some control over the movements of your torso. In walking, they work in conjunction with your quads. The hamstrings are the muscles that enable the knee to bend, while the quads allow the knee to extend or straighten. Hamstring strain and overuse. Once upon a time, we used our bodies a lot more than we do today. We moved to perform manual labor and stretched our muscles by sitting on the ground over time. As we regularly began to sit in chairs for extended periods, our hamstrings have suffered by becoming increasingly inflexible. It's like any area of our training. Use it or lose it. A serious hamstring injury can happen in a variety of different ways. The hamstring muscles or their tendons may tear as a result of an overstretched injury. For instance, if you have to sprint suddenly when you are cold, or your muscles are already tight because of previous strain or fatigue from training hard the previous day, a direct blow to the hamstrings while they are contracting can tear the muscles. Much less severe, but much more common, is a hamstring pull or strain, which is a gradual pain that is a result of a specific movement or activity. Such an injury happens for similar reasons to an acute hamstring tear. You strain or overwork already tight, fatigued, or weak muscles. Overtraining, especially if this involves repetitive movements, is a very common cause of hamstring overuse strains. The overuse strain starts with a very slight pain, which gradually gets worse as you continue with the activity which caused the problem. The problem with this overuse injury to the hamstrings is that they tend to reoccur, even if they are not so serious as to advance to an acute tear. They limit your ability to run, sprint, hop, and stretch your leg out. The most important factor in recovery is regaining efficient function and full flexibility in the muscles. If you try to resume your sport before you have completed the whole recovery process, a reoccurrence of the problem will be inevitable. A mild hamstring injury may recover within 10 days to 2 weeks, but a more severe problem can last longer than 3 months. This is a great stretch for the hamstrings that will help relieve stress and prevent pain from the overuse. To perform this stretch, do the following. Sit on the floor with both legs out straight. Bend your left leg so that the sole of your left foot is flush against the inside of your upper right leg. Try not to let your right foot flare out to the side while you are at this position. Extend your arms and reach forward by leaning from the hips as far as possible while keeping your knees straight. If you can't touch your toes comfortably, place a towel around the bottom of your foot to help you stretch. Hold this position for 10 to 30 seconds, but do not lock your knee. Remember to keep your right foot upright with your ankles and toes relaxed. Switch legs and repeat on the alternate side. When it comes to such sports and activities as soccer, basketball, and volleyball, or any regular movements that requires constant pivoting, you must take care of to regularly stretch and exercise your hamstrings. Great ways to work the hamstrings include lying down leg curls on a Swiss ball, stiff-legged deadlifts, and workouts on a leg press machine. You should now have a thorough understanding of the 3 muscles that make up the hamstrings: the bicep femoris, the semitendinosus, and the semimembranosus. Working in conjunction with the quads, the hamstrings enable propelling movements such as walking, running, and jumping. We've looked at the kinds of things that led to the hamstrings pulls and strains. Lastly, we learned a good stretch to help overused hamstring muscles relax. For a specific exercise that work the hamstrings, see the presentation leg exercises.
This has been another presentation by My Weight World.